We are starting chapter 50. So this is, in a sense, the last chapter from this whole continuum of chapters, really focusing on developing our love for God. 3 more chapters after that, 51, 52, 53, and that's another, I'll call it another subunit within Tanya. But now is chapter 50, we're really focusing on the last, another type of love, another dimension. The more I feel his love for me, the more I naturally have love for him. So that's a very strong love and a very easy love, so to speak. The Rebbe called it the Darach Karov Ma'oid Ma'oid, the very, very close, very, very accessible way of connecting to God. So what else are we going to talk about? This last type, if you want to call it type of love that we're discussing now, and again, we've gone through many chapters and many different dimensions and different strategies and different techniques and different thoughts to think to elicit a love. So this last chapter on this, in chapter 50, we're focusing on what the Rebbe is calling a different love. Different than all the loves we've discussed so far in Tanya, in a sense. Well, why is this love different? So to understand why this love is different, let's talk about what a normal love is like. So a normal love comes from what we call the right side of God's energies. Meaning when we have God's spheros, God's divine emanations, we envision them like a triangle, and then another triangle, and then another triangle. So we have the right, left, and the middle. The right side, we have Chachma, God's divine wisdom. Directly under that on the right side, we have Chesed, the kindness. Kindness is expressed as love. On the left side, we have God's Bina. Bina is the analysis, the understanding, the delving in to really absorb a concept. And what's directly under the Bina, if again you're following these triangles, is Gevura, which is not expressed as love. Gevura is the strength, the withholding, not the love. So normally, loves come from the right side, from God's Chachma, from that divine spark, source of what will become understanding, which in an emotional way manifests itself as chesed, as giving, which then emotionally is what we call love, and which is symbolized by water. As water flows down, as water nourishes, as water causes things to flower, that's God's love or any other love. Again, we're looking at it from the God dimension, but it's true for all loves. All loves come from our right side, from our chesed, our kindness, that's expressed as love, that's symbolized by water, by the nurturing, by the flowing downward to give, by the causing the beautiful things of this world to flower. So loves are water. Loves are the right side. Loves are coming from kindness, from chesed. And loves are symbolized by the service of the priest, the Kohen. As the verse says, that the Kohen is ish chesed. He's the man of kindness. He's the man of love. So that loving service is like the service of the priest, of the Kohen. What's the point of all this love? The point of love is to connect to God. Meaning, what does the love want? Well, the love wants to be one with God. The love wants God's energies to illuminate your soul. It's the soul of the one loving. How do we get to be one with God and have God's energies illuminating our soul? Through the service of Torah mitzvahs. So that's the normative paradigm. The right side, Chachma, that seminal wisdom expressed in the emotion of chesed, kindness, which is experienced as love, which is symbolized by water, which is symbolized by the priest, which gives us a sense of, God, I want to be with you, and therefore I'm going to immerse myself in the study of Torah and the doing of the commandments so you can shine in me. That's all normal. What's happening on the left side? Well, the left side is the side of understanding, of contemplation, which comes into the emotional sphere, as we said, Gevura. Gevura is like this withholding energy. Gevura is not water. Gevura is symbolized by fire. Right? Water flows down, water nourishes. Fire is hot, fire is intense, and fire retreats. Fire goes away, fire goes up, fire ascends. And Gevura, we normally do not think of as producing a love. Gevura could produce an awe, a nullification, a fear. We don't think of it as a love, but it could. And that's what this chapter is talking about. The love that could come from Gevura. The love that's not symbolized by water, that's symbolized by fire. The love that's not symbolized by the priest, by the Kohen, but symbolized by the Levi, by the Levi. So we have the seminal wisdom, Chachma. We have Bina, understanding, contemplation. We have the emotional attribute of kindness, of strength. What's normally creating love? What's normally creating fear, nullification, symbolized by water, symbolized by fire. expressed by the priest, by the Kohen, expressed by the Levi. So this whole left side business seemingly doesn't have anything to do with love, but the Rebbe is teaching us that there is a love that all of this left side energy can produce. And as you can understand, since it's a love coming from Gevura, from strength, it's a very, very, very strong love. That's interesting. We're actually just coming, B'Hashgacha Pratis, from Parshas Toldos, right? This week's Parshas Vayetze, last week's was Toldos. And Toldos is all about the life and times of Yitzchak, of Isaac. And we're told that Abraham, was a human embodiment of God's kindness. And Isaac, Yitzchak, is a human embodiment of God's gevura, of God's strength. So you would think, well, if Isaac is the strength, that's the withholding, that would be like a minimization. And I would see that minimization in Isaac's life. But actually, I don't see that at all. Actually, everything Abraham had, he somehow had more. And if we look in the discussions about Isaac in last week's Torah portion that we just read on Saturday. Now it's Tuesday. We're very much in proximity with it. He planted. It was a bad land, a bad year. He got 100-fold. All the wells that were closed up of Abraham, he opened and he dug more. And he's flourishing and never has to leave Israel. And everything's just flowing in his direction. Everything. Very bountiful life, not only in the spiritual dimension, of course, but in the physical plane as well. And Lubavitch Rebbe explains that this idea of gevura, which literally means strength, and which we sort of think of as withholding, therefore less, judgment, nullification. Gevura means an intensification. And therefore, when there's this intensification of the energies, actually, even more godliness should flow down. So whatever bounty Avram received as a human embodiment of kindness, and he did receive tremendous bounty. But of course, Isaac, as we see, had more because he was the gevura of that chesed. He was the intensification, the stronger energies of chesed. The intensification of chesed, that's gevura. So that's sort of a little mind-bending because we don't think of gevura as a strength as meaning an extra whopping dose of God's kindness. But the Rebbe says that's what it means. That's what gevura is, which of course connects, as we'll discuss here, this whole messianic concept that in the times of the redemption, the dominant emotion, so to speak, is going to be gevura. We're like, gevura, fear, nullification, that's the dominant emotion? Yeah. Gevura has so much power, and when we understand how it works, it's not a minimization, it's not less, it's stronger. So I think it's Hashgacha Pratis, and that was the Torah portion we're coming from, and this is literally what we're talking about now in the Tanya, this idea of gevura not as, well, that can't be a love. Gevura has nothing to do with love. Gevura is nullification. Gevura is fear. Where in the world can you connect gevura to love? It's a stronger one. Like we're saying, gevura means intensification. It's an even more intense one. So that is, in essence, what we're going to be discussing in this chapter. Now, all of the levels of love that we discussed above, Hemi Sitra Diamina. Well, they all come from the right side, as you understand what that means, as I just explained. Ubechinas Kohen, Ish Chesed. They're all, as I told you, embodied by the priest, because the priest is called Ish Chesed. That man of kindness, that man who's embodying the quality that will be expressed as love. V'nikra kesef hagadash. And in terms of metals, this love of the right, this love that's symbolized by water, this love that's symbolized by the priest, is a love symbolized by silver. Now, why is it a love symbolized by silver? Because the Hebrew word for kesef is etymologically, kesef, silver, nichsof, desiring. So the term for silver, that metal, really in its roots is a concept of desiring. And as I said, when you have this love, you have a desire, a very strong desire for God. You just strongly desire the house of your father. So we have, as we're saying, the right side, God's seminal wisdom, chachma, God's chesed, kindness, expressed in love, embodied by the water, embodied by the priest, embodied by silver. All of that is the structure by God, and all of that is a structure by us. So I have the seminal wisdom in me, which is flowing into the chesed, which is expressed in the love, which is symbolized by the water and the priest and the silver. That's all normal. That's all how it's been through all these past 49 chapters of Tanya. That's all the right side. But yesh od b'chinas ahava. There's another type of love, ha'oila al kulana, which ascends beyond any of these loves. Kimailas hazahav al hakesef, like the advantage, the superiority of gold over silver. Now, when we're saying the superiority of gold over silver, again, we said right, left, seminal wisdom, understanding, chachma bina, chesed, gvura, the kindness, the strength, love, and what normally is expressed as fear, but here is expressed as a stronger love, priest, the Levite, the water, the fire, the silver, the gold. When we're looking at the difference between silver and gold, it doesn't come down to, like, so to speak, dollars and cents, because you could have a lot of silver and you could have very little gold. So depending on how much silver you have or how much gold you have, that would determine the monetary value of the silver versus the gold. So that's not what we're talking about here. What we're talking about is the very essence of these metals themselves. And it's actually explained in the Zohar that gold has a special allure. If someone here much appreciates silver over gold, okay, it's fine. But according to the Zohar, there's a power, there's a drawing that gold gives us, that gold just pulls at us in a way that silver does not. And that's why, in its essence, it's a more valuable metal. Meaning, in terms of monetarily, it might be worth less because you might have, like I said, a lot of silver and very little gold. But in terms of just its essence quality, gold is embodying a greater pull on the person. There's a certain pull we have toward gold, and we don't have that pull towards silver. So silver expresses normal loves. And again, it all works out in the language. And of course, we've learned many times that the name for something in Lashon HaKodesh, in the Holy Tongue, really expresses its essence. So silver is called kesef, from the word nechsof, to desire. So silver really expresses this idea of this love, this desire, and ultimately, of course, the love and desire for God. But there's a love like gold. So love like gold doesn't desire. Silver is kesef, is nechsof, is desiring, and gold isn't desiring. Like, what's going on? So as we're saying, this gold-like love is very different than all the silver-like loves, from this fact of what you're desiring. In a normal love, as we said, you want God. Well, what do you do when you want God? If you're an understanding Jew, you learn Torah and do mitzvahs. Why? Because through Torah and mitzvahs, God and I are one. I want God. I want to be one with God. You want to be one with God? I've got the path. I've got the solution. I've got the strategy. Learn Torah. You and God are bound up in essence, like we've learned in many, many, many chapters of Tanya beyond. If you're doing the commandments, you and God are also one. So that's kesef, that's nichsof, that's the desiring, that's wanting God and getting Him by channeling this passion into Torah mitzvahs. That's not what's going on by the love of the left side. By the love that's not kesef, it's not nichsof. It's not a normal desire. Normal desire means I'm normal, I'm human, I'm a person, and I want God. And I take my passion and invest in Torah mitzvahs, and I get God. That's not what happens on the left side. Because the left side is gevura. Gevura is like intense. As I was explaining with the idea of Yitzchak, of Isaac, the intensification of the energies that are normally channeled as love. So when you're in that intense space, you know what? You don't want to be a soul and a body in this world, and you're going to do Torah, and you're going to do mitzvahs, and you're going to get God, and all is wonderful. You don't want that. This is much too intense for that. This isn't like nechsof, regular kesef, regular silver, regular desiring. This is expressed as a total negation of self, which of course makes sense coming from gevura, which is of course the idea of nullification. This is expressed that you just want your soul to leave your body and be one with God. We call this in the classical language of Kabbalah and Hasidus the movement that's called ratzu, which means racing. That you just want to race out of your existence. I don't want to be a soul in a body and get God. That's like small change. I just want my soul to leave my body to be one with God. Well, if your soul left your body to be one with God, you wouldn't exist. Okay, whatever. Like, you're not going to go there. You're not going to think about it. Irrelevant. Because it's gevura. It's so, so strong. So it's not a regular kesef, nechsof desire for God. It's beyond that. It's gold. Gold is just like this pull. It's just this pull that's literally like pulling your soul out of your body to be one with God. That's this left side gold Levite type of love. So obviously, if you gave in to the feeling, well, you would be dead, you know, and there wouldn't be any point. Obviously, you can say there's no point because you're not in this world anymore. You expired, but there's also no point because all of the passions we've been discussing in Tanya are to ultimately create Torah mitzvahs in this world. I mean, if you think of the whole premise of Tanya, right? It's a very clear premise. We've been seeing it throughout all 49 chapters thus far. Strongly feel love and awe of God, to channel that in service. The bottom line is the service. The bottom line is Torah mitzvahs. The bottom line is learn Torah and do mitzvahs. So why does Tanya speak and speak and speak about loves and levels of loves and higher levels of loves and spirituality and more spirituality? And why go down this whole mystical path? In the end of the day, God wants us to serve him. No problem. I have nullification. I'm a servant. I'm a soldier. You know, give me my rule book. I'll study Torah. I'll do mitzvahs. Done. No. If you try that road of Torah mitzvahs without the passion, without the love, it's not going to be this all-encompassing relationship with God that God's desire. That's our ultimate best fruition of self as man, as Jew. You need the love and the fear to have so much passion and excitement and drive in your relationship with God. And then it's not just like a checklist. Okay, yeah, I made a blessing today. I, gave my charity, gave my tzedakah, I dressed modestly. It's not a checklist. It's your whole being. It's your whole existence. Your whole reality is God. You want to give God every aspect of self. With every aspect of self, you want to be one with God. To live like that, you need this feeling. You need this love and fear. You need this passion. You need this desire. You just want to expire. You want your soul to leave all the barriers of this world and be one with God and forget all this business. So if you got what you wanted, so to speak, God wouldn't get what he wanted. And the purpose of the love would not be fulfilled. Because all of the loves we've been discussing, all of the loves for God, whatever type and style and flavor of love you're going to have, ultimately, it's to make you closer to God through service, through Torah and mitzvahs. If you have all this love, but it doesn't express itself in Torah mitzvahs, it wasn't it, No, that wasn't a godly love, because a godly love gets channeled in Torah mitzvahs. So therefore, the love we're discussing in this chapter, this very strong love, left side love, from Gevurah love, like Yitzchak love, Levite love, gold love, this love can't get what she wants. Because I'm saying, if she got what she wants, the soul would expire. End of story. Not at all what God wants. So what has to happen is, because of this enormous love for God, you have to sacrifice what you want for what he wants. As the verse said, when we're looking at the term ratzu, racing, it says ratzu v'shuv, the racing movement to God, and then the shuv, the coming back down to planet Earth. You have this racing energy, wanting God, racing toward God, and you got to turn it back down. Come back down to planet Earth and do another mitzvah and learn more time. So in the regular loves, the loves on the right side, this is just a natural extension of the love. Because you love, you turn that love into enthused, inspired, inflamed Torah mitzvahs, and you and God are one, and it's amazing. On the left side love, you don't want any of this. You want your soul to leave. And you have to be like, no, stop, brakes. I can't get what I want here. I have to put aside what I want, again, which relates very much to Gevurah. Gevurah is nullification. So I have to nullify what this love wants and just turn it back down into the shuv, into the coming down and doing Torah mitzvahs. So this love is very different and very strong and very much relates to the Mashiach concept, because it's a love of Gevurah. As we'll discuss, Gevurah, this strength, is really the modality the world's going to be on in the times of Mashiach. So continuing inside, but as we said, there's this other type of love, ha'olah kulana, which is beyond any of the many, many, many different loves we've discussed thus far in Tanya. Kemailas hazav al kesef, like the advantage, the superiority of the gold, as we said, that drawing of the gold over silver. V'ava karish ve'esh, and this love is fire. Again, normal love comes from chesed, from the right side. The right side is symbolized by water. Chesed, kindness, water flowing down, nurturing, allowing the beauty of this world to grow. The gvura side, the strength side, that's where the fire energy comes. Again, the fire is retreating. The fire is ascending, which is exactly what this love wants. It wants the soul to be like that fire and ascend up, up, up and away to God. Mibechinas gvuros elyonos, from these supernal gvuros, strengths. De bina ila'ah, from this supernal bina, understanding, contemplation of God. Right, as we said, on the right side is chachma, seminal wisdom. On the left side is bina, contemplation, meditation, understanding, analysis. On the right side is chesed, giving. On the left side is gvura, the strength, which leads to normatively, on the right side, this chesed is emotionally expressed as love, and the gvura is emotionally expressed as awe, as nullification, as fear. But here, the gvura is expressed as love. So again, it's left side. It's bina. Well, that actually makes sense, because bina is hispainus, is contemplation. And of course, we've gone through our Tanya that to create love, we're contemplating. But here, the contemplation is completely left-sided. It's contemplation that's going straight down the road of the left side to gvura, which remember we discussed in connection with Isaac, with Yitzchak, means this intensification, much stronger emotion or stronger, whatever else we're talking about, which is going to come out with a love, but not a gentle, warm, nurturing love, a fiery love, a passionate, get me up and out of here love. That's the love of the left side, the love of gold. Through contemplation of the enormity of God, of the enormity of the infinity of God, that everything is like nothing. Tislahiv hanefesh. The soul is going to be so inspired, liyakir tiferes gedulaso, to have appreciate the preciousness of the beauty of his greatness. In other words, wow, this is like this wow moment of God. So precious, so beautiful, so great. Like, all I want is him. It's not about me. Love is normally, in a sense, about me. I love you. I, capital I, love you. Otherwise, meaning I want you. You feed me. You nurture me. The relationship between the two of us is something that's good for me. That's love. Here, it's, like I said, it's very different. Because it's gvura. It's fire. It's retreating. It's ascending. It's not coming down. It's not relating. So I'm so wowed by God's reality. It's not about me. It's just him. And that's why the soul wants to expire and be one with God. In other words, if the soul got what she wanted, she wouldn't exist. She wouldn't exist not here and not there. Obviously, if the soul ascended to God, the person on this world would be what we would call dead. So here she doesn't exist. But she wouldn't even be herself above. Because again, if the soul truly got what she wanted, she'd ascend, she'd be subsumed in all this godly energy, and she would cease to exist as herself, as an independent soul. She wouldn't be destroyed. Souls aren't destroyed. But she would sort of be within this greater godly energy, so her own independent, so to speak, existence would be gone. So this is a very unusual love, because it's not like a love. It's not functioning as a love functions. A love functions with the capital I. In other words, loves are generally not selfless emotions. They can be very positive, very godly, but they're very much interwoven with their own reality. But this love is not. This love is gvura. This love is selfless. This love is just God. Just focusing on God's greatness and glory and beauty and majesty, and that's it. Nothing else exists. Therefore, not me below and not me above. Just God. Just to gaze at the glory of the King. It's not about what I'm getting from this. I'm not getting anything from this. It's just gazing at the glory of the King. Kirish ve'esh. So this feeling, this reality, is a fire mode, because the fire is retreating. The fire is ascending. That's what this love feels like. That's what the soul wants to experience. Shalheves Aza, a very, very intense flame. Ha'oila l'mayla, that ascends above. Meaning, this is what she'd want. Like this fire, so to speak, The flickering of the fire, Hasidus explains, is the fire trying to escape planet Earth and go back to the source of all flame above in the heavenly spheres. So the fire is sort of stuck on this world with whatever's holding the fire down, the wick, the oil, the combustible, whatever it is. But the flickering flame, that flickering upward flame, like we all at some point have probably just been fixated by a flame, Hanukkah, Shabbos, Havdalah, the flames, they're dancing, they're going up, up, up. Hasidus said they're trying to escape being, anchored by that wick, by that candle, by that combustible, just to go up and ascend back to its source, the source of all fire above in the heavens. That's this love. That's exactly this love. Escaping all the shards and whatever is holding us down to planet Earth, our body, all the physical realities, just leave it all. Fire. Escape. Become one with God. Lose myself in the process, but who cares? Just become one with God. Because fire, its flickering movement is because it wants to be separated from the wick that's holding it down. That wood that's holding it down. That's gripping it, that's anchoring it. It wants to escape these anchors. Vahainu, mean to say. So that is, like we said, okay, that's what a physical fire is like, because that physical fire is expressing the element of fire. As we learned all the way back to chapter 1 of Tanya, and we've probably referenced many times since, our physical and spiritual world of godliness, world of klipa, all is comprised of the same 4 elements: fire, earth, wind, and water. We have physical fire, earth, wind, and water as the 4 elements from which all is created. We have spiritual, godly fire, earth, wind, and water. And we have on the side of klipa, on the other side of evil energies, so to speak, fire, earth, wind, and water. We have fire, earth, wind, and water comprising our animal soul, and we have fire, earth, wind, and water comprising our godly soul. So when we're looking at our godly soul, the water energy is the love, right? That's the love. That's the flowing down. That's the nurturing. That's the kindness. In a godly soul, love of God, love of Torah, love of the land of Israel, love of the Jewish people, all these godly loves. The fire element in the godly soul is the ascension, the returning to God, like the tshuva, the going higher and escaping your limits and becoming beyond self. Normally, when a person is feeling very strongly a soul love, a love for God, a love for Torah, a love for the Jewish people, a love for the land of Israel, they're intensifying the water element in their soul and turning over the water element in the animal soul. The water in the animal soul is taivas, is desires, is pleasures. So those taivas, those desires, are transformed by one's love of God. So instead of the taivas, the desires, the pleasures for physicality, for whatever your animal soul, the animal debasing itself and going to that which is lower than it wants, it's now becoming a water-driven love of God. But that's not what's happening in this love, because this love isn't relating to the element of water. This love relates to the element of fire. So in a fire love, we're actually going to the animal soul's fire. The fire of the animal soul is ego and anger. And we're transforming them, because ego and anger really is, as our sages say, idolatry, right? Whoever's angry is like someone who serves idols. Ego is obviously idolatry, the opposite of this nullification, which is a God awareness. So ego is a self-awareness in contradiction to a God awareness. So the fires in the animal soul are really this expression of self separate from God's reality. And when you're using the fire of your godly soul and you're loving God like fire, which means you're strengthening the godly fire, you're actually pulling on and transforming that animal fire. Just as in a normal love, you have the animal water and taivas and desires, and that gets transformed to be a desire, a taiva, a pleasure in God. But in this fiery love, we're going on a different level completely. We're looking at how our animal soul normally operates: self, ego, anger. And we're saying it's all God. There's nothing but God. That's why all we want is God, and we couldn't care about anything else. And who cares? My life here, my life there. It's irrelevant. All that's real is God. So that's exactly the opposite of where my animal soul is going with her fire, because she's going to idolatry. She's going to a worship of self. She's going to ego. She's going to anger. And when we're loving with this fire, it's like it's the antithesis. It's not about any of that. All it's about is God. So as we love like this, that fire element of the godly soul is being strengthened, and the fire element of the animal soul is being refined. Behind mean to say, so if we're in this space of this fiery gold, Levite, left side love, we have this enormous intensification of what's going on the left side, which in our soul means this element of fire, as we've just been discussing. So if a person does this, okay, you're starting, what am I doing here? You're starting off with Bina, Hispaninus, contemplation on God's greatness. Well, okay, I mean, more or less, most of the loves we discussed in Tanya, you're supposed to contemplate God's greatness. I mean, the last 4 chapters we're contemplating how God loves me and how God's so good to me. But in general, God's greatness. But actually not. Because really, not just these past 4 chapters. In general, our love is sparked by contemplating God's goodness. God's goodness, and he's so close. God's goodness, and he's so far. But the love, even putting aside what we did in chapter 46, 47, 48, 49, which is very much how much God loves me, therefore I love him automatically, effortlessly. But in all the chapters before that, when we're talking about contemplating, in the end of the day, we weren't really talking about contemplating God's greatness. We were talking about contemplating God's goodness. Now, very often the greatness and the goodness went together, because God, who is so great, is so good, and that's so amazing, and I want him so much, and I'm so excited to be one with him. But it always went back to goodness, because that's love. Here, I'm not focusing on the goodness. Why am I not focusing on the goodness? Because again, it's not about me. This love is not about me. How can it be about me when the whole idea of the love is the great escape, and there's no me below and there's no me above? So goodness isn't what will motivate me here. It's purely God's greatness. Like I said, it's this wow, this awe. This is so cool. This is so amazing. This is so unbelievable. The greatness of God. So normally the greatness isn't leading to love. Actually, if you go all the way back to when we learned these concepts in like chapter 3 of Tanya, focus on God's goodness, that leads to love. Focus on God's greatness, that leads to fear. Then we make good and close, good and far, great and close, great and far. But basically, the goodness, the more I think of God's goodness, the more I feel love. And the more I think of God's greatness, the more I feel awe, the more I feel fear, the more I feel no. It makes perfect sense. But here, you're going to be thinking about God's greatness. But you're thinking about God's greatness to create a love that's coming from the awareness of how great. That love of how great, that therefore him. It's him. It's just completely him, that nothing exists but him. And that's why my soul wants to leave me and be one with him. So what happens after you do this? So the Rebbe says, you know what's going to happen after you do this? You mean successfully check, you accomplished the first thing, you contemplated, you thought, you focused God's greatness. I want him. Not even I want him. I want him is the wrong way to put it, because then there's that I. So I don't know how to phrase it. But it's just him. What comes next is thirst. Sima'on. A deep spiritual thirst for God. Why the deep spiritual thirst for God? Because he's so great, but I don't have him. I'm encumbered, a soul, in a body, on planet Earth. Even a very good, godly person, there's a lot of barriers now between God and the soul. So when you really feel God's greatness, God's greatness, God's greatness, what naturally follows, meaning you don't have to work to get to this. Step 1 naturally flows to step 2. If you really feel the greatness, you really have a love for the greatness, you're going to feel a thirst. You're going to feel so thirsty because he's so amazing, but we're so far. So far because I'm physical. So far because I'm in a body. So far because I'm in a physical world. I'm going to see a Gashmis. I'm on planet Earth. All those things make us so far, so to speak, from God. And of course, we could say, no, we're not far at all. Because when you learn Torah and do mitzvahs, you're absolutely one and you're not far at all and there's no barriers. But that's not what this soul is feeling. This soul is just like God. Don't give me God within Torah and within mitzvahs. I just want God. So I'm just feeling really thirsty because I don't have him. Because of all the barriers, not barriers of my sins here. There could be that too. But we're not talking about barriers of sins. Barrier of creation. The barriers of creation are blocking me from God. As is written, Sama lecha nafshi, my soul thirsts for you. Now that's of course a famous phrase in Tehillim and Psalms said by David HaMelech, by King David. Now, the Rebbe doesn't always feel a need to prove what he's saying. So if he is, there must be something that needs proof here. And you could say, why do I need any proof? This is so, like we said, it's natural. If you're really focused and fixated and passionate and it's God, it's God, it's God, of course you feel thirsty. For this I need a proof. This is so logical. But you could say not really if you think about it. Why? Because we're not talking about the person feeling far from God. We're talking about the soul feeling far from God. In other words, it's not like the person's reality, because the person's going to lose reality if the soul got what she wanted. If the Ratsu was completely fleshed out, there's no person to talk about. So it's really talking about the soul's reality. And we could say the soul's reality is thirsting for God. It's a godly soul. It's a piece of God. It's one with the essence of God. The essence of the soul is the essence of God. I thirst. I'm a soul, but entrapped in a body, a human being with an animal soul and an evil inclination. I got a lot of parts of me that make me feel far and maybe sometimes make me far. My soul is far. My soul should feel far. My soul should feel thirst. My soul should feel all this. Why would you ever assume that? So the Rebbe says, no. Look at Tehillim. Sama lecha nafshi, my soul. Whose soul are we talking about here? We're talking about King David. We're talking about David HaMelech. Now, David HaMelech was a complete, absolute tzaddik. We call it tzaddik gam. And he's actually the example given in the first chapter of Tanya of such love for God and therefore completely destroying any evil, any inner evil that would be a barrier to God. It says in Tanya that King David completely eradicated his evil inclination, as of course every tzaddik gamor, every complete tzaddik completely eradicates their evil inclination. Right? He said about himself, "V'libi halal b'kirbi." My heart is empty inside of me. What's it empty of? It's empty of his evil inclination. He killed it by fasting. So when King David, when David HaMelech is saying, Sama lecha nafshi, my soul is thirsting for you, what did he mean? He had no evil inclination. He had no barriers. His animal soul was fused with his godly soul. His whole existence was his godly soul. His body was subservient to his godly soul. It was all godly soul. And King David is saying, yeah, you're absolutely right. There's no evil inclination here. There's no separation of animal soul. My animal soul is under my godly soul. My body is under my godly soul. It's all my godly soul. And guess what? Sama lecha nafshi. My godly soul, without any of the normal encumbrances we go through, is just thirsting for God. So they were saying, look, this is my proof. When the soul really, really gets it, when the soul is so focusing on God's greatness, she's thirsty. Yes, she's a soul. Yes, she's a godly entity. Yes, her core is God's essence. All true, but it's not enough. Sama lecha nafshi. The soul is thirsting for God. And that's why the soul says, I'll give this all up. Forget all this. Forget any of the accomplishments of this physical reality. It's just about God.